Okay, it is 7 o'clock my time, so I guess we will get started on tonight's stream. As always, please drop me a message in the comments if there is anything weird about my volume, either the volume of my microphone or of the music in the background. I was having a couple of problems with my mic just before the stream started, so I would really appreciate it if you let me know if there are any issues. Tonight I'm going to continue working on my 2D Gravedigger game. This was a game that I built for a game jam back in the spring, and it's a really, really simple game loop. It's basically a take on a Minesweeper style game where there are graves that the player needs to dig up, and you need to dig up enough good graves, I'm calling them, in order to progress to the next level. And then there are bad graves, and if you click on the bad graves and you get too many of them, then you lose the game. So I wanted for the game jam to do a good polished job of just that one game mechanic, and I wanted to also make sure that my game was procedurally generated, which I didn't have a lot of experience with before the game jam. So I feel like I accomplished that, but the game turned out to be very short. It doesn't last very long. I think that there's a reasonably interesting hook for the game, but it just doesn't last that long. So I've dedicated my streams to building out that game and making it more fun. I've programmed on previous streams, I've programmed a little bit of enemy AI because there were no enemies in the game previously. And right now I'm working on widening the game space and making there be actually 4 different rounds of gameplay before you're knocked out, I guess, and before you complete the level and you go back to the overworld. And the overworld is something I also want to add to the game, potentially. I should have introduced myself as well at the top of this stream. My name is Taryn, and I started learning Unity last spring, so spring of 2020, Unity and C#. I was familiar. I had done some front-end development before I started learning Unity, but really C# is my first real introduction to object-oriented programming. I did know a little bit of JavaScript before I started C#, but not much. I definitely would not consider myself by any means an expert in Unity. I'd say that I'm probably maybe just intermediate level, and the game that I'm working on here tonight is definitely not very complicated. I do, in the day, for my day job, I work on freelance work in Unity, and this stream here I host because I want some time to just sort of play around and try things out and not feel like I have to work under a bunch of pressure. So sometimes I might be taking the long way around with code, but it's just because I like to experiment a little bit and see if I can do things more than one way. So please bear with me if you're seeing me doing something that seems sort of like overboard or not very efficient. I really do like experimenting and figuring that out, and that this is my time to do it because I'm not working on any sort of deadline, which is really nice. Unity has a very big window, and the editor window is very big, so I'm using Unity on one of my my workspaces here, and then I have Visual Studio on another workspace. I'm just gonna quickly go over to Visual Studio. Yes, there's Visual Studio. It's working okay. So I will be sort of using hotkeys to go back and forth between the two windows. And if I'm ever blabbing on and on about code and I've forgotten to go into Visual Studio, again, if you could just drop me a note in the comments, that would be great. I don't always remember to go back and forth. But I find that this is sort of the best way to stream Unity because you do sort of need to see the entire editor window, because I am working with, the assets folder, the console, the inspector, the hierarchy. So I don't really want to make it too small. And then obviously you need to see Visual Studio as well. So Visual Studio is sort of like the integrated environment that you can use with Unity, that I've always used with Unity. Okay, so one last thing I'll mention is that I do only work on this game during the streams, and I stream on Sundays and Tuesdays, so it always takes me a few minutes to sort of figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not working on this at all off camera. This is just sort of my pet project for the stream, so every time I load it up, I'm sort of trying to figure out, okay, what was I doing last time I was in here? I can see some error codes already. And I have I've already forgotten to go back into Unity. Okay, so yeah, some error codes down here. This is the console if you're not familiar with Unity. This is where you'll see all of your warnings, all of your errors, and of course any debug log or print statements that you're making. I use those a lot, obviously, to make sure that things are working. And you'll see that I have quite a few in here. These are from previous streams. I was trying to make sure that the correct number of graves were spawning. All of these white squares that you see here on the screen, they're very ugly. They are white like that so that I can see them. And I've mentioned on previous streams that I'm not really being too precious about the placement of the squares right now. I'm mostly interested in nailing down the code and making sure that things are spawning as they should be, and then I will go back and make it look more aesthetically pleasing. So I'm just gonna hit play here to actually figure out what I was doing last time. And yeah, so you'll see here that the graves are spawning. So these piles are all graves. You can see my little shovel cursor, and I click on them and the grave disappears, which means that it's a good grave, a grave that we want to be clicking. That is a bad grave, so you saw the little skull come up. And right now I have it programmed so that you can only do 3 bad graves before you lose the game. I'm going to increase that number for sure. Okay. So I'm just testing here. It looks like this is okay. Okay. So last time I was, what I started with for this game is just this little screen here. So it was just 1920 by 1080. That was the original iteration of this game, and that was just not long enough. So I ended up quadrupling the game space. So now that there are 4 game spaces. And I wanted the effect of having you finish one game space and then having the camera fly over to the next game space, finish this one, have it fly over here, finish this one, have it fly over here. Sort of thinking, I mean, obviously this game is not super realistic, but I wanted to emulate more the actual layout of a cemetery. And in my experience, at least in Canada where I live, cemeteries are often very big. They often have like little pockets of trees and I don't know, other little like benches and park-like areas sometimes between the plots, between the different areas of the cemetery. So I wanted to emulate that. I could have just had it say like you complete one game space here and then the space like regenerates itself. And like I said, this is being procedurally generated, so it should never, the good and the bad graves should never really come up in the same spot more than once, because that would be boring. So I could just have the player play like 4 rounds before you say, okay, you won, sort of thing. But I feel like it doesn't really tell much of a story that way. So what I was working on last time is making sure that the counter and the UI and okay, that's another thing I want to work on, is actually childing the UI to the camera so that it's zooming around the play space. But I want to make sure that this counter right here is actually counting the number of graves that are left that have to be dug before that round is considered over. So I'm just going to play that again. Actually, sorry, I'm just going to restart that one more time. Okay, so 6 have come up here, so there should be 6 graves that need to be dug. So That's 1, so that should have decreased the total, and it's not doing it. That one is. Okay, so the UI isn't quite working how it's supposed to be. First thing I'm going to do is make it so that I can click more than 1 or more than 3 bad graves before I lose the game, because that is pretty prohibitive. And I need to figure out where that is in my scripts. So I wrote these scripts quite a while ago. I don't feel great about how they're written. They're pretty messy. Like I said, I did this during a game jam, so I was going really quickly. But I've also learned a lot since I worked on this game in earnest for the game jam. So I am going around and sort of fixing some things up as I go. And I'll do more of that later. Okay, so the max sphere is 10F. If the max sphere is 10F, then why is it losing after 3? Or maybe it isn't actually losing after 3. Let's just double check that again. Okay, so 14, 13, 12. It does seem like it's working sometimes. So that's 1 fear. 11, 10, 9. So that's 2. Yeah, okay, it's definitely more than 3, isn't it? 8, 7. That should have been a fear 1. So maybe the problem is that the skeleton is not, yeah, that looks to be the problem, is that the skeleton is not always instantiating. And that's supposed to be like the tell to say that that is a bad grave. And it doesn't look like it's always working. But it does look like the UI is counting down the number of graves properly. So what I want to have happen is, let me open up. I don't believe I actually ended up solving this yet. But this is my camera controller script, and I have programmed 4 different positions for the camera. So the camera is going to zoom around. So like I'm calling them 4 different quadrants, right? The 4 different cemetery areas, I guess. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And so once you found all the graves in the first cemetery area quadrant, then the camera is going to zoom up to the next one. You know, you do that one, then you zoom over here, and so forth. So I want to actually call this next position method so that when all of the graves have been discovered, then it will actually zoom the camera up to the next plot. And I think it's pile counter. Gonna get rid of these commented out lines. Okay, so if the treasure piles, and this is something I was dealing with in the last stream, is that I had my variables were named sort of inconsistently, but consistently enough that the methods were still running, but just not in the right way. So I had to go through and rename some of my variables, and that ended up helping. Okay, so if the treasure piles are less than or equal to 0, then we're going to start the win sequence. And I'm going to, we can have a win sequence, that's fine. So that'll be when the actual entire level has been completed. But we also want to have a, like start next quadrant sequence, I suppose. And where did my camera controller go? I'm just going to make a reference between the level loader and the camera. I probably can just, without serializing it, I probably can get a hold of it. Hold on a second. So camera controller, And I will put a reference here. So camera controller equals, can I do this? Camera.main.getComponents. Oh no, not getComponent, getComponent. It's been a long day. Okay, so hopefully that is the correct reference. And so start next quadrant, we can call camera controller, what did I call the method? Next position. So that was in level loader. Yeah. I'm wondering what this is. This dot position is camera. I have no clue why I have this in here. But okay, I'm not sure. So, and I'm just going to put a print statement in here as well, just in case that next position method doesn't run properly. At least I'll know that it's actually running this method. Okay, so starting the next quadrant sequence. Hopefully all my references are cool. Yeah, so this is good because there's a built-in reference to the main camera already. I shouldn't, as far as I know, I shouldn't have to serialize the camera because I can just get a hold of it right here and then get the script off of it. Of course, we have to compile. Okay, so let's try this again. I know I have all these crazy debug log statements in here, print statements. I'm just going to leave them for now because I feel like there is a reason that they're there. So I shouldn't be able to lose, hopefully. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh goodness. 1. Ah, and I clicked the wrong one. So there is actually another mechanic that's built in that lets you, it's this light button here, and the particle system is not working very well anymore. I think it's probably not on the right layer now. But when you hit this, it's not working right now. The button's broken. If you're ever interested in seeing what this game actually is supposed to look like, you can go to my itch page and see the demo version of it, because right now it is not looking very good. So it's any of the graves that are not sparkly. Success. Okay, so that ran the win sequence, but it didn't do anything else. So it popped up the win panel there. So let's go back into the code and figure out exactly what's happening here. So pile counter. Oh, it's because, yeah, I forgot. I actually forgot to put the method in. So it was, of course, running start win sequence when I actually want it to run start next quadrant, which is like the worst method name ever, but oh well. We'll just leave it at that for now. Okay, so let's try that again. So I've already identified one issue, which is that the skull is not instantiating consistently on the graves, so the player is not getting the visual feedback really, or as much visual feedback as they should be, that they are hitting a bad grave. So I will definitely look into that. Okay, and it jumped. So that's good. So I guess so you can see the UI is 0 here, so it jumped up to the next area sort of scaring me because I wasn't expecting it. Camera's obviously in a horrible place. UI isn't coming with the camera. But the idea, the mechanic is actually working, I think. So that is awesome. Yay. And I just opened Unity Hub for some reason. So let's actually go to camera position 2. So this is position 2, and I'm just going to copy its position and throw it actually on the main camera right now so I can see what that looks like. And then I'm just going to move it up. Yeah, not that far. Oh no. Oh no, I'm moving the canvas. That's not good. So I want to move the Y down, say like about there. And now I'm just going to copy this position and paste it back onto pause 1, which is the second position in the array of positions. The graphics that I'm using right now, they're pixel graphics. They're not meant to be stretched out this much. Like I said, the original play space is a lot smaller, so I'm going to have the graphics redone. But I'm just basically looking to make sure that this idea will work. And hopefully I moved the correct thing. I'm worried that I moved the parent object as opposed to the child. Okay, so let's try that again. So the main camera, when the game starts, the main camera is going to pop back to pause 1, which is the initial position, hopefully. Yes, okay. And I'm gonna turn off those ugly squares because they're bothering me. So the amount of charges that you have on the light is dependent on what difficulty mode you're playing the game on. So there are 3 difficulty modes. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, yeah. So it jumped up to the second quadrant, which is awesome. So what I really want to have happen is to have the camera, rather than just pop over, because I'm basically just resetting the camera, its transformed position, like instantly. I want to have it sail over. And I've tried a couple of different ways to do that, and nothing has worked the way I want it to. So right now it's just going to have that pop over, but that will be changed in the future. Oh, I didn't even know there were sound effects still coming through. Oh gosh. So I haven't looked at those sound effects. I don't know if you mean in the game or if you mean me making some sort of weird effect on camera, but in the game there were originally sound effects programmed in, and I thought I had disabled them, but maybe not. So if anything sounds weird, okay, yeah, if anything sounds weird, I haven't got to that yet. So yeah, I wanted to make it like a really consistent art style, so I was trying to find like old school sound effects to go with the old school art style. And I know that's not really, I know some people would argue that's not like really in the spirit of a game jam. Like I know for a game jam, you don't usually worry too much about polish and things like that. Like it's okay if you have big bugs, not like game breaking bugs, but some bugs. But I wanted to take this game jam, I wanted to see it as a challenge to create as polished of a product as I could during a short time frame. But of course that meant that the scope of my game had to be pretty small, because I wanted to make the finished product look pretty good, as opposed to spending more time expanding the game mechanic and then lacking that polish. So I did it, I think, maybe not the best way, but that was my thinking going into the game jam. And I'm going to put the main camera back to pause 1 because it's bothering me. Where's the main camera? There we go. And I'm also going to turn off these ugly squares. I think that is in prefab. Spawn points. Oh yeah, so this was originally called dirt piles, and then I was confusing myself because I had too many things that were called similar names. There was like grave and dirt piles and dirt and a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm going to crank that down. Yes, there we go. Still sort of ugly looking, but better. Yeah, they look like they're sort of floating on there because I've stretched the graphic out so much, but oh well. That looks a little bit better. So you'll notice though when I run that 2D particle effect, the frame rate slows down quite a bit, which is not ideal. Okay, there, and it jumped over. Awesome. And hopefully that first quadrant is just going to hang out there. When I had the enemy AI activated, the enemies were still like freaking out trying to go visit those plots. So I'm going to have to do something about that. But the enemies have been deactivated. What problems did you have with animating the camera position? Yeah, I don't know if I still have it in here. But I couldn't find a way to smoothly move the camera. Like I was trying just defining a new vector 3. I was trying a vector 3.lerp, vector 3 move towards. I'll admit this is not my strong suit in Unity, is doing the actual movement stuff. And initially what I thought the problem was is that I had some of my camera positions were at, the Z-axis was at 0 as opposed to -10. So that partially solved the problem. But now it's been a couple of streams now, so I can't remember exactly what the problem was, but from what I can remember, it was zooming up and then just sort of flashing the canvas on and then going black, the camera view. So that's something I still need to figure out. And again, I thought it was to do with the Z position. I think one of the problems initially was that I was using a vector 2 instead of a vector 3, so I wasn't catching that Z-axis position. Vector 2 smooth damp. I might have tried it. It's been a while, but I'll make a note in one of my scripts to try that. Never tried that before, but yeah, non-zero Z. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I put a note in my script so that I can look that up and try it. Yeah, any of the vectors are still a bit of a problem area for me. I am getting more comfortable with like the spatial sense and the math, but I am decidedly not a math person. I don't have any formal training in STEM at all. I'm actually a former history PhD student. So for a long time I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this when it came to Unity and coding. And so I've slowly becoming more and more comfortable with it. But I really appreciate when people can point things out to me in chat, because I love learning new things. Okay. So I guess what I want to see now is whether or not, well, what I would really like to do, and I was trying to do this in my last stream, and now I can't remember why I gave this up, but I want the UI to come with me and to zoom with me. So I was thinking about childing it to the camera, which I've never really done before. Like I've childed a player to a camera before, but not a UI, so I wasn't sure whether or not that was even possible. Okay, and I did at one point have like 4 different copies of the UI bar because I'd gone through and just made copies of my canvas to widen my play space, and then I had like slowly deleted them and reorganized all my game objects and stuff. So I think this is it. Now why, if I just drag it up here, oh yeah, okay, so it's gonna disappear. Oh, because it maybe needs to be on the main canvas where everything else is being rendered. That might be what the problem was, which I can probably figure out, but for now I'm just not gonna worry about it. Okay, I'm gonna just play and see if it continues to jump around the quadrants as I'm hoping it does. Yeah, at least that particle system's looking a little bit better. And I had some trouble too getting the particle system to render. Okay, so that's the problem. I have to actually look at how the different graves are being generated. So it is jumping up there, but there are no graves. So let's go into our scripts again. I think it might be this one. Okay. So quadrant 0, okay. Get the transform for each child, spawn points. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of these print statements. I don't like to delete print statements right off the top because usually there's a reason I have them in there. I'm just gonna grab this and throw it at the bottom of this class just in case I end up needing it. This is how I usually work, is like I have a whole bunch of commented out code at the bottom, which I get rid of eventually. So let me just see if I can try to remember what I was trying to do here. So initially how the game was working is that there was just the one play space, and it was all of the graves were being generated like right at the start of the game. So in the start method, and here I'm doing it in awake, and there's a reason why I changed it to awake, because of some way that the scripts were talking to one another. But then I divided it up into the 4 quadrants. And I guess what I was doing here was just doing quadrant number 1. I guess maybe what I want to do is do quadrant number 2 after quadrant number 1 is done. Although I'm not sure why I would have programmed it like that, because I wanted to have the piles up there as the camera was sailing over, but maybe that's what I was trying to do. So I'm not super happy with how that is, but yeah. Transform children quadrants. Yeah, okay. Start next quadrant. Okay, and then I probably want to call the grave spawner, which I'm trying to think, is that instantiated? No, I think that exists in my hierarchy. I'm not actually sure what object the grave spawner is sitting on. Sorry, I think you are in Visual Studio. I'm just going to go back in here. It's the dirt. Yeah, okay, so there is a reference to it in the hierarchy. So I might just end up serializing that. I'm surprised I don't have a reference to it already. I'll just serialize it for now. So initially there was more than one grave spawner, which is why, and I had them in an array. So that's why I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I'm using source tree. You don't need to get components and children. You can do for each transform child. Oh, okay. That's good to know. Thank you very much. Okay. That's pile counter. So that is just populating. Is this an array? Populating, yeah, the array here of the quadrants. And quadrant number starts at 0. Okay. So if I do this here, whoops. If it starts at 0, then it should do the first one. I don't know, I'll just call it generate quadrant for now. So I guess I should make this public. For now, I will. Whoops. And I think I'm trying to think if I need to do this pile counter up here or not. Because this is what was actually counting to see the number of graves that were in the UI. I guess I probably need to do that every time though, because how I have the UI sitting in the scene. Okay, and that's grave spawner, get treasure piles. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of error codes here. Okay, so if I'm going to generate the quadrant, which is going to be whatever quadrant we're on, generate graves, child.gameObject. Oh my goodness, what was I trying to do here? For each of them, generate a grave for that child, because it was trying to find the different spawn points, I think is how I had it. This is the problem with only working on this on stream, is that it takes me like half the stream to figure out what I was trying to do. It's been a week since I've looked at it, so. Yeah, I think that should be okay. So then what I need to do is increment my quadrant number when the yeah, when the level is over, I guess. So where am I doing that? Level loader. I guess I'll do here the generate, what is it called? Grave spawner, which I need to serialize or drag and drop. So grave generate quadrant. And if I just do the quadrant here, increase, I don't know if that'll catch it in time. Oh, I guess I can't do that because I have to start, unless I do this first, but then I'm going to be repeating my code and I don't want to do that because I want the quadrant number to start at 0. So I don't want to build the increment into my method there. Ooh. I mean, I guess I can make this a public int, which I don't really want to do, but don't know if that'll work though. Okay, let's see what mess I've created here. So first things first is I need to make sure that that serialized field is filled out. So that is on my level loader, which hopefully is in my scene. Lighting, it's got to be somewhere. Might be on my canvas. Nope. Might be on this canvas. Nope. UI bar. Yes, there it is. And maybe that's not where my serialized field was. Serialized field, grave spawner. Oh, hold on. There's a problem with my script. It's just how I've commented things out. I have too many slashes. Yeah, hold on. I think you're over in Unity. Sorry, I'm just making sure that my commenting is actually okay. And I'm missing a curly bracket. Okay. So yeah, that's something that trips me up all the time, is that I'm wondering, like, where is the serialized field? But it's not actually loading properly because there's a syntax error in my script. Which is a good thing, because Unity lets you know that, so that way you don't do something crazy. Okay, so now where was my level loader? Here it is, in grave spawner. So now there is only one grave spawner, right? Hopefully there is now. There should be only one grave spawner. I see an enemy spawner. Okay. And let's just double check that public variable, which was on my grave spawner, quadrant number 0. So it's being initialized. Again, I'm just going to double check and make sure it is being initialized at 0. Quadrant number, yes, okay. So initially I had this so that when the light was going, the game deactivated the cursor, which I had a lot of people complain about because it made it harder, but I sort of liked it. Oh, come on. See, now I've forgotten where the good graves are supposed to be. Okay, there we go. And the problem is that my UI is not coming up, but the graves are being generated. Whoops, okay, now something weird happened there. Hold on, let's just try that again, because that might have just been me. At least we are seeing the graves being generated, so that's great. And for now, I don't care if the UI is just hanging out down at the bottom. I just want to make sure that it's actually displaying the number of graves as it should be. Okay. Yep. Okay, so something happened there. Oh, because it didn't push the number of graves to the UI, probably. So I think I might only be generating the text for the UI once. So I probably have to redo that. So let's go back into the code. So let me look at my hotkeys here so I remember how I have programmed this. Okay, there we go. So generate quadrant and generate pile counter. So that is being run a second time. It was pulling up the right quadrant, and just to double check that, I'm going to, at the top of my generate quadrant, I'm going to just print the quadrant number. And I like to just put a string statement on the front there, just to make sure that I'm tracking what I'm thinking I'm tracking. Okay, so generate pile counter. It's going to get them. There are this many treasure piles. Okay, so I want to pay attention to what the console is actually saying here. So that way I know how many treasure piles it's generating. And it looked like it was only generating 1 for that second quadrant. And that is definitely a problem. Let me just go back in here. Blah, 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 blah. Generate graves. Generate item. So, and I'm going to print the junk piles too. And yeah, my terminology is really confusing. So the treasure piles are the non-shiny piles that I want to click on as the player, and the junk piles are the shiny piles that you don't want to click on. So the theme of the game jam was all that glitters is not gold. So it was sort of like reverse logic where you don't want to click on the sparkly gold piles. The idea was that it was like, you know, like an Egyptian tomb type of thing where if you disturb a grave that has treasure in it, then you might become cursed, which is why I say you are cursed if you click on X number of junk piles. And I'm going to just standardize this because it bothers me. Okay. Let's go back in. And it's not, come on. It's not loading. Okay, there we go. Sometimes it hangs for a second and I'm like, something's wrong. How good is my memory here? Okay. All right, and so the UI is down here and it is not saying anything here. But if I look at my console, it does look like it's giving me, yeah, okay, so it thinks there's only one treasure pile there. Okay, so I think we need to actually put my print statement somewhere else. So in my grave spawner, generating the graves, generating an item, and let's print it here. Scroll down to make sure. Okay, and then for my treasure piles is, whoops. And then I'm gonna just turn off the print statements in my pile counter just so that I know where the statements are coming from. There are blank junk piles. There are blank piles of junk in quadrant. I'm going to do it like that actually so that I know. Oops. Like that. And hopefully that'll grab the right quadrant number so that way I can actually identify. I don't know if you can see that, but I just added a call to show what quadrant number we're in. So that way I can see. Okay. Yeah, I'll grab you back into Unity this time. I still haven't figured out what these little dots are on here. It was something I was playing around with before, but I want to actually get rid of those eventually. Okay, and it's looping through right here, so this isn't going to be super helpful. 13 piles of junk. Probably, yeah, I'm not sure what the actual total number of piles here is here, but that's probably about right. Oh yeah, okay. I should have paid more attention to what I was doing there. I cranked the number of times you can get a bad pile up to 10, and that's still, you still actually have to pay attention to what you're doing because you'll lose. Come on. Yeah, that button is not clicking right. Okay. And so now we have, there should be 26 piles of treasure. Now that's too many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Be helpful if this was actually in a grid so that I could count properly. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 25, 26 piles of treasure. Okay, so that was 3 then. Let's see what happens on this quadrant. And the camera position is really screwed up, which is why this looks screwed up. Okay, and then that hit the cursed. Okay. So first, before I do anything else, I'm going to actually fix the camera position so I can see what I'm doing. So we know that one is okay. Pause 2. I'm going to just copy the position, throw it on the camera. And I'm going to just move it up. Where is it? Yeah, just move the Y position a little bit like that. Okay, and then pause 3. So again, it's cycling through these positions in the array. And I'm just making sure they're not like off the canvas like they were before. Oh, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. So copy position, paste position, and it's rotated some crazy way somehow, so that was not good. Yeah, that's probably all right. We'll just move it up on the Y a little bit. Okay, like that. And I gotta remember to actually copy and paste those values back in. And now I'm just gonna reset the camera. Sorry, I know this is finicky, but I just wanna make sure I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, there we go. And let me save. So once again, I'm just going to go back into the scripts. Okay, so this is for each. So it's running this every time, which I don't really want to see that. I want to see it more, I almost feel like putting an update, but that might be sort of crazy. Because I don't want to see the number for every spawn point. I want to see the total. So maybe I do need it in my other script. Maybe that will give me the information that I'm looking for. Yeah, okay. I'm going to turn these off right now. Let's go to my pile counter, which is the script that is in charge, or the class that's in charge of actually sending the numbers over to the UI. So this is where I was having some trouble, not last time, but the stream before, getting things to actually talk to each other. So we're generating the pile counter, which we're doing. Again, let me just double check. So at the end of generate quadrant, we are hitting the pile counter. So getting the number of treasure piles and junk piles and setting that. I wonder if I need to, when I'm regenerating the quadrant, if I need to actually reset the number of junk piles and treasure piles. And I don't know that I'm actually using this number of piles value anymore. If I comment it out, is it going to screw everything up? Oh, yeah. Okay, I am somewhere. So I'm going to just set these back down to 0 here, just to make sure we're starting off with a clean slate. And then it's doing the spawning, blah, blah, blah. This is all messy. I'm going to change this. I'm using this like weird system of like instantiating a little baby image and then taking the name of that game object and using that to identify whether or not the pile is a junk pile or a treasure pile. It's way overcomplicated. I'm going to go back and fix it, but for now, that's what's happening. Yep, so I am increasing the junk piles and treasure piles here. So that's over in pile counter. So in pile counter, yeah, I wonder if I get this. I feel like I had a problem with this before. But if I actually define these values in the start method instead, and then I'm gonna print them in the update and see what happens there. Oh. Okay. Yeah, it'd be helpful if I actually copied the entire statement. And hopefully I have the right variable names. And hopefully this won't make it go crazy putting this in update. My update method was suspiciously empty in that class, so we will see. It's working, it's working. And yeah, I have a bunch of warnings down here I have to deal with as well. It's just, I think it's just variables that I've defined. I've initiated at values and I'm no longer using them. So I need to get those out of there. So there are 15 junk piles, there are 10 treasure piles. Ugh, once again, actually I have to play the game. I'm trying to test and play at the same time. It doesn't work. Sorry, I'm trying to look at the console and play. Where's the last pile? Okay, there we go. So there are 0 treasure piles. Okay, so that's what the problem is that it is not actually generating any treasure piles. Shoot, so that's not gonna work. The way I have those methods running is not gonna work. I mean, it works for the first one because everything's in start method. So once again, it might be, I'm going to throw this reference back actually into pile counter and not at the start because it might not actually be getting, when it finds that reference, the piles might actually be at 0. So I want to get that reference when I need to know it. So I'm going to try that again. I'm going to move those variables back down there into the actual method, and I'm going to just try that one more time. 23 and 13. Okay. Oh my gosh, don't let me lose again. Yeah, that button is really... I feel like there might be something blocking it, and so I'm not able to click on it properly. Oh no! Ah, no! No! Okay, let me try that again. I need to be playing this on the easy mode so I have more charges of my light. Okay. 0 treasure piles. All right. That is not good. Actually, just before I go back in, I'm just gonna, I'm just double clicking and getting rid of a couple more of these. I have a null check here. Just getting rid of a couple of these print statements because they're just getting in the way. 10 junk piles, 15. I don't need this. So if you don't know, you can double click on error messages, depending on what they are, or debug log or print statements, and it'll take you to the scripts, and you can comment them out there. Blah, 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 blah. Found treasure. I don't think I need that because I'm not dealing with that right now. Okay, that should make things a little bit cleaner. Okay, let's take this back to the beginning. I feel like I wrote the code for this so quickly. It was so easy. Not easy, but it was pretty straightforward. And every time I've come back to change things, I think I've said this on the stream before, that I think this might be a case where it would be easier if I just redid the game. Especially because of how I have things spawning. Everything exists on the UI canvas. Which is sort of a pain for layering and that sort of thing. Okay, so this is just the null check. I'm just going to get rid of that. And I'm going to generate the pile counter. And we know that it's working the first time. So what's happening is we're coming in on the awake method. We are, so this was the old way I was doing it. Hold on, let me just bring this up. The old way I was doing it was finding all of my white squares, which are the spawn points, had the spawn point tag on them. So it was finding all of them and then putting them all in a list. But because I want to divide them up into quadrants, I'm doing it differently. So I'm going to get rid of that right now. Yeah, so that we know that this is working for each child. Spawn point. I almost wonder, actually, this is something silly, but I wonder if it's actually not finding the components. And I just took out that null check, but let me just put that back in because I didn't pay enough attention to that in the console. It'd be great if it could give me the name too of the child for which no component is being found. I don't know. I feel like I would have noticed if it was throwing this error already, but let's just double check. No. Yeah, no component found. Okay. That is interesting. So that makes sense. So it's essentially not locating the spawn point, and that's why it's not able to spawn, but that actually doesn't make any sense, because if it can't find the spawn points, then I'm not really sure why it's generating these dirt piles, because it shouldn't be able to do that either. So that is interesting. So quadrant, so this is the first quadrant. This is the second quadrant. And I'm going to actually, I think you guys are in Unity. I'm just back in Visual Studio for a second. I'm just going to print the name of the child so I can see which children actually have the components and which don't. So rather than just say component found, I'm going to just... for child. Okay, and I think you guys are already in Unity. So let's run that again. So no component found for... Okay, this is good information. Let's see what it can find a component for and what it can't. So we're in quadrant 1. Quadrant 1. No component found for quadrant 1. Okay, so the actual empty game object quadrant 1 should not have the component spawn points on it, because it is just an empty game object. It's basically just a heading that I'm using to organize my game objects in the hierarchy. So that is fine. No component found for row 1. That is also fine, because I don't think, yeah, that's fine. It's just acting as an empty game object as well. Okay, so component found for dirt pile. Yes, 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 yes. So all of these have components. Okay. No component found for row 2. Okay, oh shoot. Okay, so maybe it is finding the components. Yeah, so it is finding the components. Shoot, I thought I was onto something. So the only things it's not finding the components for are my empty game objects, which makes sense why it's not finding a script, right? Because there's no script existing on it. Whereas every other thing, all the spawn points have the spawn point script on them. And that's what I'm using to locate those spawn points. Shoot. I was hoping that was something, but it didn't make sense if it was, because I don't see why anything would be getting instantiated if it could not correctly identify the spawn points. Okay, so I guess I'll just take this out. Disappointing. And generate pile counter. I feel like I'm probably calling this at the wrong time, but I think it should be here. I mean, it should be running after the for loop, I would think. So after all of the things have been generated, then it's going to, like, all of the graves have been generated on the spawn points, then it should be generating the number of piles. Yeah. I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure what's happening here. I'm gonna just put this comment back in just to see what it's doing. I'm also going to put a comment here to say that I'm running the method. And guys, I've got to admit, I've got a pretty bad headache. So thinking is very difficult tonight. I took a long walk with my kids this afternoon. I think I'm sunburnt as well, so I'm probably only going to last about another 15 minutes here, but I will be back on Tuesday night to stream again. Hopefully in better shape. Okay, 10 treasure piles remaining. 9 treasure piles. That's a bad one. 8, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. There are 14 treasure piles remaining. Yeah, there should be. That's right. Where is that being printed? There are blank treasure piles remaining. And then where is this coming from? There are 0 treasure piles. Okay, get this out of the update. That's just confusing me. Get it out there. So I just went back into a script and removed a print statement from the update method because, again, I think it was printing a variable at a time when I didn't care what its value was, and that was confusing me. So let's just try this again. $12 treasure piles remaining. Okay, so it looks like it is finding 12 treasure piles. Now let me just pause this for a second and find where my UI bar is. And I gotta zoom way in. Okay. So it looks like it is generating 12 treasure piles, which is what we want to have happen. And it looks like it is, sorry, I'm just over in my script here. It looks like it is doing it at the right time as well. So that is good. Okay, let me unpause. No, but then as soon as I start clicking, it just goes over to the next quadrant. I feel like this was the same problem I was having a couple of weeks ago, and I thought I'd fixed it. I guess I'd fixed it for quadrant number 1, but now that I'm trying to expand this and add in subsequent quadrants, it's not working the way I want it to. 12 treasure piles remaining, yeah. So it does look like this is getting the correct value here. But then when we hit find treasure, it should be decreasing the number of treasure piles. First of all, it should be posting the number of treasure piles to the serialized text field. And then it should be decreasing those number of piles. I mean, I guess I'll throw one on here. I'll just cut and paste this. So now I'm going to have a print statement only when I found a treasure pile as opposed to when the piles are actually being generated. Oh, thank you for the encouragement. All right. Whoops. Okay. There are 0 remaining. Yeah. no matter what, even though it's saying that it's generating the right number of piles, once I click one, it's just going right down to 0. And if anyone has watched my previous streams, that might sound like a familiar issue, because it was the issue I was having a few weeks back, and now I can't remember how I solved it. I want to just double check my variable names and make sure I haven't screwed something up here, because I feel like once I started ironing through and changing my variable names and making sure they were more consistent, that helped. Treasure piles. Good treasure piles. I'm gonna get rid of this method because I don't think I'm using it. Okay. Like, this is running right. Pile counter, generate pile counter. It's jumping over here. And it's casting the right number here. Because if it wasn't, the very first quadrant would not have the right number. Let's just double check that I don't have more than one instance of this pile counter in my, because I did, in my hierarchy. And now I actually have to figure out where it exists. Level loader. These are just all my piles remaining. Okay, so I think it might actually be in my UI bar, which seems weird, but okay. Yeah. And it's just attached to my text and my UI bar. This is actually interesting because I see that I'm running this generate pile counter method in the pile counter script as well. So I was assuming that it was coming from this grave spawner script, but now I'm not actually sure which call it is. I'm going to just comment this out and see if that makes any difference and maybe gives me a little more information. So that's curious. Okay, so I can see here on the UI that I'm not, it's not properly showing the number of graves here, which shows that the call that was coming from inside the grave spawner script was not working. So it was actually the this call here which was doing it. Interesting. That is a good piece of information. So I am calling it. What if I just do it down here? I'm going to get this out of here because this one doesn't seem to be working. So I don't know if it's that it doesn't have the right object reference or whatever, but I'm just not going to worry about that right now. That's really interesting because I really thought that the method was coming from the one class and it was being called in another one. Okay, so it's not, oh, did I not put, hold on, I'm just back. Yeah, I just forgot to uncomment that out. Ooh, we don't have that many junk piles this time. Oh my gosh, I'm still gonna lose. Come on. There's definitely something blocking that button. Okay, so now we're generating the pile counter again. Yay! And we have the number here in the UI. Okay. So that was probably the problem. And now I have no more lights. I need to reset the number of lights that are available. And let's just see here and make sure that the, yeah, everything seems like it's working. The piles are decreasing. And you know what? I'm going to crank up. Sorry, I'm just going to go into my scripts here for a second. I'm going to crank up the number of times that you can hit a bad grave. So that way I won't lose. Because I want to test and make sure it's jumping to the next one too. Wow, that's really not what I thought the problem was going to be, but great if that solved it. Okay, so now I've got 50 chances to do this. So I can't lose, right? I just want to check. So next stream, I'll definitely make sure that my UI is coming along. And I want to try that camera movement as well. Okay, yep, next one, camera's messed up, so it's obviously horrendously off-centered, but I don't care right now. Okay, and yeah, it's only sometimes is it instantiating the skull on the bad graves, so that's definitely something I'm gonna have to do next stream as well. Yeah, that's it. And then it goes back around, and I mean, that'll actually be the time when you win, when you've done all 4 of the quadrants. I just have it programmed so that it goes back around to the first quadrant now, just so, I don't know. I just didn't want to launch the win sequence. Okay, awesome. Yeah, okay, really good. I don't know why I had 2 references to the same method. But, obviously not great. Not a good idea. And it's almost 8:30, so I'm thinking I should probably just end it there before I jump in. And actually, I'm going to just do one more thing here. Now I can't remember where I had this programmed. I think maybe in pile counter. So if it's this, start this. Do I have a reference to the quadrant here? Probably not. Is it level loader? What is this? Do I have I don't have a reference to that, do I? Okay, yeah, I definitely should get a reference to that as opposed to doing these find objects of types, but I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. So I will actually cache a reference to the Grave Spawner class as opposed to doing a find object of type. Is equal to, what's the max quadrant? So yeah, I don't want to be doing find object of types, 2 of them in one if statement here, but just trying to get this out onto the page, and I'll go back and do it later or fix it later. Okay, so that should hopefully be checking to see if we've reached the final quadrant, and then once the treasure piles have got down to 0 in the final quadrant, then we can launch the win sequence. And I'm just gonna do here, and then I'll just and this would probably be easier if I was using namespaces to connect all these together, but now okay. And I'm gonna go back into my thing and start my quadrant at 3. I'm actually curious to see what this does for the camera position. So it's not, yeah, okay, it's still starting at 1. So that doesn't make any difference. Just gonna run this one more time, and then I'm gonna end it. Still not sure why that skull is only popping up sometimes. It was working, but I broke something. Oh my goodness. There we go. So now we're on the 3rd quadrant. Again, horrendously off-centered camera. No UI. But I don't care right now. And success. Okay. But of course that's only showing up on, I need to actually resize that canvas because it's only applying to the initial screen. Okay. But that's the idea, is that it's going to start the win sequence once I have completed everything. So that's good. So next time I will work again on actually getting, I think it's time to actually get the camera and the UI in position. Like I said, I didn't want to spend like too much time working and finicking around with that before I could make sure that the way I'm programming this will actually work. And I want to see why those skulls aren't instantiating when I'm clicking on the cursed graves. They are sometimes, but not other times. So I'll figure that out as well. And yeah, actually creating more, I mean, I guess that's what we were doing this time, was creating the game loop, but working on that some more, and having there actually be some content in an overworld as well. So I'm thinking of doing some sort of like resource management or something like that in the overworld as well. Okay, so yeah, I guess that's it for tonight. Thanks to everybody. I'm not even sure if anyone's in here anymore, but thanks if you are watching. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Thanks for sticking with me as I tried to figure out that what was going on there with the scripts, and I'm glad that I actually figured that out. I will be back on Tuesday for another stream at 7 p.m. Eastern. I realize that's a little bit early for some people. I have little kids that I need to go put to bed right now, so that's why I stream at an earlier time. And yeah, if you want to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, I'm active on both as well. I really like chatting with other developers, and yeah, so if you want to connect with me on social media and tell me about what you're working on as well, that would be awesome. And I guess I will see you in my next stream. Thanks, guys, for coming. Bye.